There we go. All right, well, our recording has begun. So again, I'm Scott Birkenbuell, and I'm the Vice President of the April Board of Directors. And today we're going to be talking about peer support, the backbone of independent living. And I guess I'd like to pose the first question is, as I think when Centers for Independent Living started, peer support was for the most part one-on-one. You know, you had a peer that was with your center, and you'd have new consumers coming in, and they would be, assigned an individual. And I'm wondering, are any of you still offering peer support that way?
Well, maybe I can break the ice by mentioning a couple of things, make people feel a bit more comfortable about sharing, perhaps. I was thinking when you had invited me, Scott, I was thinking about the kind of ways we provide services at Disability Link here in Georgia. And I'm thinking that we have quite a few hybrid ways of doing peer support. It's not many people who come in and say, I would like a peer supporter. People don't necessarily know what that is, but lots of people will come in to say, I need a job, I need a house, I need a this, or whatever it is that their goal is. So typically we provide one-on-one support through independent living specialists, but then we have a wide variety of classes and groups and support groups and activities that are all based essentially on peer support. Depends on how you define it. To me, peer support is not so much the format, but the intention. Are we sharing experiences? Are we sharing resources, etc., etc.? Are we doing all the things that peer support's about? And are we not telling people what to do, which is the sort of very opposite of peer support? I wonder if people have got their own versions of how peer support happens in their centers and in their experience.
Hi, everyone. My name's Cassidy Thorne. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman in her early 30s. I can still say early 30s. I'm wearing a white sweater and I have a green background in my office. I also have several invisible disabilities ranging from psychiatric to cognitive. I am the programs director at ASIL in Seattle, Washington, and we have really put some work into our peer programs in the past year and a half. We've been able to start 4. One of them is a shared goals group. So we meet on site and work towards a group goal. And they've ranged in various things from cooking a Thanksgiving meal and sharing what we're grateful for, doing mindfulness through art, and a budgeting game that we created that had its ups and downs, but ended up being a lot of fun. We also have one called Epic, Empowering People in the Community, that meets quarterly. We go out into the community. Luckily, King County, where Seattle's located, has some amazing incentives that allow us to go to the aquarium, museums, and we're also working on doing a volunteer project with those attendees at Food Lifeline. So not just being in the community, but really being of it. We also have an older adult peer support group that's based on mutual aid, and they work to identify problems in their community. They live in senior housing, and they have concerns like food. They recently got rid of their transportation to grocery stores. So they've created a resource hub within the community, food bank resources, etc. And then we're working on expanding Healthy Community Living, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. It's a 10-week goal setting course. We're working on turning it into fee for service, so keep your fingers crossed for us. And then the most exciting one that I saw modeled at another SIL is a peer-to-peer mentoring program. So upon intake, one of the questions among 1,000 demographics is, are you interested in peer mentoring? And then if yes, a sub-question, are you interested in being a mentor or a mentee? And then through that list, we kind of do a little matchmaking, online dating style, and allow people to connect. We had to set up a lot of policies on confidentiality, that we take no liability, but it's been really awesome to see connection happen outside of the organization independently. And that's all for me.
Hello, everyone. How you doing today? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. My name is Troy Bowser, and I'm an independent living advocate at Insight Enterprises, Inc., the Peninsula Center for Independent Living in Hampton, Virginia. And we offer our peer counseling services in a one-on-one setting, and then we do a group counseling setting once a month. The one-on-one setting, I know from my experiences and what I do, I like to do a lot of listening to the participant, to let them, tell me about themselves and basically gain a rapport with them, to gain relationship rapport, advocate to participant relationship with them, and let them know that there's going to be some things that I will have to do on my end, and it's going to be some things that you will have to do on your end. But together for the common cause, we can get your goal accomplished. But that's how I pretty much like to come at it. And I also once a month facilitate a group counseling session. And these group counseling sessions, they deal with disability related issues. Like we may talk about how a person with a disability have a social responsibility. We may talk about, like, tomorrow, we'll be having a defeating disaster, getting people ready for the hurricane season that's coming up. So just giving them helpful tips. But we usually like to do it, from Insight in those two type of ways, either peer one-on-one counseling or a group counseling session once a month, which I find to be very helpful for our participants.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Cassidy.
That I am a mid-50s male. I'm wearing I'm gonna say, just for the sake of this, it's a burnt orange button down polo shirt. I'm very dashing and very handsome.
Hello, Garrett.
Hello. So and I'm the executive director of Multiple Choices at Center for Independent Living here in Athens, Georgia. And what we do, we've started more peer-to-peer groups as it relates to activities, because we're in much more of a rural area, that we're finding every time we have an event, there are individuals that are meeting people who lived here all their lives just like they did, and they didn't even know they existed. So we tend to have more group activities and let them gravitate to whomever they tend to have synergy with. A variety of activities, a lot of things such as bingo, bridge, talent shows, and just various trainings. We always allow them an opportunity to just sit and mingle and meet someone that they didn't know was there, shake their hand, introduce themselves, and we find that is working a lot better for us in this part of the state. That is working for us.
Thanks, Garrick. Anybody else got something interesting to share? Well, it's all interesting. Anybody feel the need to share?
Well, there's a lot of things in the chat too, Linda.
Yeah.
Several centers do offer one-on-one peer support, like what I had spoken before. And then Cora in Wyoming said independent living and they have a couple of weekly and monthly meetings on Zoom that offer peer support. And we're also conducting a workshop right now called Friendship and Dating with Disabilities. And we include participants from across the eastern half of the state, currently including about 20 individuals ages 16 to 40.
This is James Turner from Disability Link. I am the volunteer coordinator, administrative lead, supervisor here. And the peer support training, and I took it many years ago. It has changed my life in many different ways. And I assist Linda on doing the many things coming up with the peer support training that we will be having on next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And Linda, I have some names for you, so I've been doing my part. Yeah, and it has definitely helped me even grow more. And I'm not ashamed to say, uh, I've been here at Disability Link, started as a volunteer, and as an employee, I've been here a total of 9 years. So I must be doing something right. So Linda, you have taught me well, and I really appreciate it. And I just want to pass that on to other individuals that are thinking about taking the peer support training, if not next week, in the near future, because it is very helpful in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you for the flattery, James. I appreciate it. Thanks for doing your part. Miss Linda. Well, thank you, James. It does lead me on to ask people about training and supporting peer supporters. If you're thinking of peer supporters as only staff, or peer supporters as consumers, or peer supporters as consumers who've had particular training, do you make a distinction like that? Does it make any difference?
Like it, I
This,
just,
go ahead.
sorry, Troy.
Go ahead.
This is Scott, and I was just going to tell you at our center here, we do offer the training that we offer currently right now. We've trained peers on how to work with groups. We've also trained our peers on how to facilitate living well classes, and currently we're doing an advocacy training with them where they can learn to be better advocates for themselves, as well as advocates, system advocates, and assist us when we're going to the legislature and going to other community places where we're trying to change the way the systems are in our communities. And we bring our trained peers along with us to help spread the message. And Cassidy has her hand up.
Sorry about that. You'd think I'd have it under control by now. This is Cassidy again. One of the really exciting things that we're doing is creating job descriptions for our volunteers. And along with those job descriptions comes an orientation. And once they complete their orientation, they get a certificate. And I don't know if I have the capacity to share my screen, but I do have an example of it if anyone's interested in seeing it, or I can share via email. But put a lot of work into it and loving how it came out.
Mhm.
Thank you, Cassidy. I appreciate the
Also-
intention of ensuring people really have an understanding of where they are in peer support, what works to make peer support effective peer support. Yeah, thank you.
I think as far as when I be as like when my group counseling sessions are held and we're having a discussion, I like the fact that my participants be learning from each other. They use each other and take ideas from each other, and as the conversation goes on, and they know that we all learn from each other. So it's like an open network. And I like that part about the peer counseling, that everybody can learn from each other. It's not like just a teacher. It's like an open conversation for everybody to be engaged in, to take apart from somebody else's experiences. And I think that's what's special about our group, that everybody can share and learn from each other, and not afraid to, to put themselves out there to say they're going through this or going through that, and to be looking for the help. So
Thank you, Troy. Appreciate that. So what about the kind of what's the best way to provide one-on-one peer support, do you think, if that is going on at your center or in your experience?
I found out the best way to give people one-on-one counseling is to find out what they're interested in or to find out what they're dealing with and then focus on that aspect of the session. So that way, when they walk out of here, they can feel like they walked out better than where they came in. So I like to, attack something that or talk about something that's dealing with them, and,
Yeah.
and something that they have to try to figure out. And a lot of listening, a lot of talking comes to that, but I like to, pinpoint on what's going on with them and focus on them. And the more I do that, the more they like to open up and the more they like to come to the sessions and share. So I found that to be very helpful when I keep the focus on what they want.
Thank you, Troy. Yeah, I heard you say listening, careful listening, and focusing on the peer as two really effective ways of ensuring peer support is as useful as it can be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody want to talk about some of the groups that they are currently supporting at their center that work on a peer support model? Give us some new ideas, help us to enhance our groups at our centers.
Yeah, so I'll go. So my name is Lenny, and I'm an independent living specialist with Resources for Independence Central Valley. It's based out of Fresno, California, but we serve 5 counties. So I'm in the satellite office in Merced, California, and our organization has a peer support group every Wednesday at 2 o'clock until 3:30. And so, and it's virtual so that all of our population can join on that day. And we do a lot of things in our peer support group there. Like we support each other, like it's been said. We do sometimes we have presentations where they're educational of like what's going on in the community, their communities, or just in general, like if we want to hear from maybe somebody from the Social Security or some other agencies or organizations that our consumers seek services from, and they want to have more knowledge about what kind of services are available to them in their communities from other organizations or whatnot. But we also keep in mind that peer support group is, like it's said here, supporting each other, supporting one another, whether it be our consumers or our coworkers, just our peers in general, all the way around. Our peer support group, we have staff members attending, we have consumers attending. So it's a combination. So we get like a lot of conversation going. We could have a presentation scheduled, or something like a movie getting ready to be shown, but then in the beginning of the peer support group we start talking, and we just keep talking and talking, and we don't end up seeing the movie. So like it just happens like that, though. But I'd also like to add too that I turned 62 this month, and so like now I'm officially a senior. So what I started, and I partnered with Area on Aging here in Merced, is that I started a senior peer support group. And last week I held my meeting on a Friday, and at first I wasn't getting anybody. It was scheduled at 1 o'clock. So like I was only getting 1 or 2 people. And I was thinking, how can I get more people to come? So I was thinking, well, the elderly people like to take care of things first thing in the morning and do all this stuff in the daytime and eat their lunch and everything. And there they have like a cafeteria next to or a cafe next to the Area on Aging. And so I asked the director if I could have it at an earlier time. And so now it's at 9:30 to 10:30. I got a lot of people showed up last Friday, so it made me really excited. But that population wants to hear a lot about, like they want a presenter from the DMV, to let them know what they need to do to, like hold on to their license. What are their limitations? Where are their barriers, that they're going to be facing? And if they get their license taken from them, what are other means of transportation? So that opens up topics and, for me to get presenters in, like from transportation or, and they also wanted to know, like, how do they have maturity classes? What do they do at their age? Like, what can they possibly do? They want to keep their independence. They want to stay living outside, living on their own. But what are their limitations? So there's a lot of things like, but I love peer support group. It's a combination of things, it could be educational, it could be social, it could be just anything. But thanks for letting me talk. And I'm glad to be here. This is my first time here, so invited by my coworker, Aubrey. Thank you.
Thank you, Linny. Congratulations on your birthday. Hope you're still celebrating. Thanks for sharing about your established groups and in new groups.
Thank
Interesting.
you.
Christine Gray, you got your hand up?
Okay, I was waiting to be called.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for
Oh,
being
no, that's
late
okay.
today. I'm so sorry. I'm from the Sea Island, Broward in Florida, and I've been doing peer support groups for a long time. I do weekly peer support groups virtually. I started at once a week in the afternoons, and now I've taken it to 2 times. One is in the afternoon, and then I offer another time during the morning, which I think people find a little bit helpful. My topics range, I kind of and I think I said this at one of the other meetings, so if you guys have heard me repeat this before, I'm so sorry. But my topics range, and I kind of use the calendar to decide what my topics are going to be. I take also suggestions from the consumers about what they want to hear, and then I kind of split, we call it workshops, but I kind of split the workshop up into about half an hour of, they last an hour actually, first of all, and then half an hour on a specific topic, and then the other half an hour, I kind of have an open-ended question, and then people kind of go from there and just talk about what they feel like they want to talk about. And then I've also done one-on-one peer support. I heard somebody talking about that earlier. And so that's kind of what I do. And again, I'm sorry for being late.
You have nothing to apologize about. Thank you very much for sharing, Christine. So I have another thought. I'm wondering if this is even relevant, but I'm thinking about, does anybody do anything in terms of the support groups that ensures that it is based on supporting self-determination and self-advocacy, that those intrinsic parts of independent living are part of what's going on in the groups? Is it relevant? Is it interesting? Let me know.
And in my groups, advocacy is very important. That's one thing the group expands off of, is when everybody get a chance to advocate for themselves or state how they feeling about this particular topic or this particular situation. When they get to speak and say they point of view, they feel like they've advocated for themselves. They feel like somebody's listening to them and they're being considered about what they're talking about. So I believe that plays a big part in my counseling sessions. As far as the group of counseling and for one-on-one counseling sessions, I always instill into the participant that, look, this program is about you and about what you want. Not about what nobody think is best for you, not about what, I think is good for you. It's about what you want for yourself. And my job is to help you reach that independent level that you want to meet. And I think that goes a long way. That gives them a sense of ownership. It gives them a sense of, I did it. And they spoke up for themselves and they followed all the way through with it. So I think that goes a long way as far as the advocacy aspect of it.
Thank you, Troy.
Christine, you had your hand up, and then Cassidy has her hand up next.
Okay, sorry. I feel like I come to the meetings and then I don't have anything to say and then I have bunches to say. So, okay. We were talking about self-advocacy, and what I have done in the past is make a couple of workshops that kind of focus on self-advocacy. The other thing that I do is, because we're in Florida, I work a lot with the consumers on disaster preparedness. And then I also try, with every topic that I have, I try to connect them to either advocacy or independent living, depending on what they are, to kind of bring that focus back to why they come to CIL, to improve their independent living skills or to improve advocacy skills. But so, yeah. And then somebody asked me how I increase my attendance for my groups. My Thursday group is good. My Tuesday group is just growing. And then what I did was, we actually have someone that sends flyers out through email, and then I also have built my own email list of consumers who want to come to the workshops, and then I send them flyers as well. And so if you want, I can put my email in the chat in case you have any more other questions. And I'm sorry for taking up so much time.
You're not taking up.
I love this meeting, so okay.
Don't apologize for taking your rightful time. And yes, please do put your email in the chat so people can connect with you directly. Thank you, Christine. Cassidy, I think you're next.
Hi, everyone. This is Cassidy. Linda, I'm really glad you asked that question. How do you intertwine IL into these? Paula McAway and I had a really good discussion about asking that question, is what we're doing IL? And it sparked a really great discussion with the team, who is hearing the community needs of just having a hangout group. But that doesn't meet IL. So we are, as a team, navigating that line between what our community is asking for, how we can loop in IL and still meet the needs. So it's caused a lot of frustration. Not a lot, that was an exaggeration, a smidge of frustration, and that we can't just hang out with each other and support in that community the way that we want. But it's really been like a recalibration into what IL is and what our services look like and how we ensure we are doing disability justice right.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that consideration and sharing, Cassidy.
Then Maria, you had your hand up.
Hi, yes, thank you. My name is Maria Cordova, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Independence Center in Colorado Springs. And I support our peer support specialists. We have 2 of them. So I'll be sharing all this information with them. But just part of the question that you asked is one discussion that we've had more with consumers is talking about the importance of failure, and how with your determination, like your anything in life, failure isn't always a bad thing. It's a learning opportunity, because sometimes we'll get people who are really frustrated about certain situations. And so it's, I guess, talking more about how we can help people learn through that failure, and how we can help people get through the frustrating parts of their lives. And then also finding those tools and resources to connect them to. And also, just part of that peer support is not feeling alone. All of us have failed. And so how can we turn that into a success?
That's great. Thanks, Maria.
And then, do we have one? We have a question in the chat here that and it's actually from very rural southeastern Montana. And Jen Hawkinson, and she got or one of her prize in a chat, but she wanted to know how are you recruiting peers? And she's finding it super difficult because you have to understand in southeastern Montana there's more cows than people, and so what would and the suggestion was from Cynthia, and she said try online support groups. If that's possible, people can join by phone if needed. And does the group have other suggestions for Jen? And we have another one from Mariah, and she said agreed. She's having trouble finding peers and mentors and mentees.
This is Linda. I'd just like to repeat. Okay, somebody else. Go ahead. Who's that? I thought I was talking over somebody. Sorry.
I was gonna say, to find better mentors or mentees, I would probably try to find someone who has been through the process that wouldn't mind giving back to teach somebody else on how to go through the process. Does that make sense?
It certainly does, Troy. Peer support is about sharing our own experiences with others, so that and that is the pluses and the minuses, maybe some of the failures, as Maria was mentioning.
Yeah, they'll be able to share their experience on how they got from point A to point B, C, D, you know, how they did their journey, and be able to guide or help someone, inspire someone else to go through to find their independence, or, you know, to give back to the cause.
Lovely, thanks, Troy.
And then Jen Hawkinson, as our original question asker, has her hand up.
Good.
Hi. So Dustin is the one sitting with me, and he does our peer mentor program, and it's been around for a while, but we're having the worst time recruiting people to be peers. So has anybody had to build up their program from the bottom up? Does that make sense? And Scott's right, there are more cows than people over here. Our closest town is 38 miles away with a population of about 500 people. So we are we are the frontier is what they call us. So does anybody have any suggestions that way? I love the idea of getting people in that have already been through the program. The problem is we don't have anybody.
And Sherelle, you have your hand up?
As soon as I figure out how to unmute my computer. I was just going to say, at my center right now, we don't have a lot of peer support groups. So I do a lot of one-to-one peer support. And I think that will be good. For one, it gives me time to develop whatever I want to use in forming the peer support groups and the peer support training. And it just, for one, it gives me a chance to learn the different resources that are out there to be able to help people, and also just kind of gives me a better idea of what's needed and like what groups of people might be able to go good together. So I think just kind of starting at that first base of being able to do peer support with the consumers that you already have and getting to know what their needs are, getting to know what their skills are, to where you can be able to select those people and piece them together.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And then,
Chanel.
Maria has her hand up with a suggestion for Jen also.
Hi again, everyone. This is Maria. And one thing I noticed with doing outreach, because we do a little bit of everything, we'll do intakes and INR, is explaining what disability is for a Center for Independent Living, because I'll talk to somebody who does have a disability, but they don't feel like they have a disability just because of their perception of it. So they'll think, I'm not in a wheelchair, so I don't have a disability, so I can't join these groups. So sometimes we'll explain to them, we'll use an ADA definition of disability, or we'll just talk more about their disability and see if they feel like maybe the peer support group would be good for them, and if they maybe change their mind about how they feel about disability. And sometimes just having a more in-depth conversation will help them change their mind to be like, oh, maybe I do have a disability. Maybe I will check out. We work in some super rural areas in Colorado too. And so sometimes people will be interested in joining a cross disability support group that we run in one of our rural communities. And so, and then also letting community partners know too, that we don't require proof of disability. It's self-disclosed. So they can refer anybody that they want to refer to us, and we'll have that conversation with them, see if they're interested.
And then
Thanks again, Maria.
Tracy Garner. You're still muted, Tracy.
Sorry, thanks. Yeah, I was just gonna say we are not far down the road in our peer support group program, but what I didn't know if the original question was about recruiting people or about getting the groups filled with people. So two things is that we have a volunteer form on our website, and we've been getting some group facilitators that way. And just the second thing I would offer is that we're going to do topical groups. So people that are, need housing will hopefully work together. People that are applying for Social Security, whatever stage they're in, can hopefully learn from one another. So it's more about the topic than it is about that this is a group for people with disabilities, because obviously the nature of our services are already geared toward people with disabilities. So that's kind of like not even part of the conversation. And like the previous person said, we also don't require you to, just to proof of disability. So those are the two things. And we've also put, a couple of staff have put the volunteer opportunity in their signature line. So just increasing visibility on getting the word out, and then making it more topical, because people are interested in certain topics and need support around that, more so than that we all just have disabilities. So that's the only thing I wanted to offer. But our program is nowhere near where it needs to be. We are starting peer groups, and those are being led by volunteers.
Thanks, Tracy. Lovely. Thanks for sharing.
And Cassidy.
Hey everyone, Cassidy again. Is it Lenny? Lenny, I am really excited to share. We have the same problem. No one knows about us. We're a secret that doesn't want to be a secret anymore. So what we've been putting a lot of energy into is networking. There was a big emphasis of not siloing, and we've really seen that in the disability justice movement, when we have so many opportunities to partner and collaborate, because disability knows no intersection. So I would highly recommend, I did a whole state search for like LGBTQIA, veterans. There's a lot of different opportunities. My brain is just freezing as I try to think of them. And what I did, I have a little brief introduction PowerPoint. I'm a PowerPoint girly, on Disability 101, what are CILs, how can you refer to us, and a little mix of disability pride in there. So it kind of gives what everyone else was talking on. Here's the information about what disability is versus what society says it is. And so using that education, and then you can partner with them if they're open to collaboration. And we've actually held collaboration peer mentoring groups. So it's a way to get involved. And I'm going to say this under my breath and hope Linda or Scott can correct me. But throughout the whole state, what I've heard is you can use Part B funding to count those towards your numbers. Don't hold me to that though.
Would you repeat that?
This is Cassidy. Which part, Scott?
About what you're using the Part B, what are you using the
Yes.
Part B funds for?
So I've been told, and I need to do more research. So maybe Scott or Linda, this is something you can follow up with. But I've been told when you're serving outside of your county, because during quarantine and COVID, we really did do mass virtual events, and you can use those, your Part B funds, towards out of county consumers.
And is your Part B funds coming through your state agents, your state?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. It would depend on what your contract says. So I would just look at your contract first, because some of those will line it out specifically for you, and the others are a lot more flexible. So I'd take a look at your contract first, and you're most likely, you're probably going to be fine. But I would just check with your contract, and I'd call your designated state agency. Just if it's not outlined in there, just give them a holler and say, hey, I'm doing this. Hope that's okay.
Awesome. This is Cassidy. Will do. But it really increased our numbers, Linny. And worst case scenario, you get an increase in INRs and a really pretty section for that PPR that's going to pop.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And it was Jen too who was looking for ideas for increasing connections with people, right, Jen?
Yes, we do you're right, we're the best kept secret ever. That's what we tell people. And people are floored by the amount of things that we do. And we work for Lyft, Living Independently for Today and Tomorrow. But Montanans are a tough bunch. We're just tough. We rub dirt in it and we're fine. So the difficulty is having people get the buy-in. Does that make sense? Because in East, especially with like mental illness and stuff, we are trying to talk about it. We want people to know that it's okay to talk about. So I had one gal tell me I don't have mental illness, and I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm. This
And then
is Cassidy.
I said I have anxiety and depression, and I said I get, when I get in the funk, and she goes, oh, you get it, and I'm like, yes, absolutely. So that is another part that we have a hard time with, is getting people to believe in disabilities, because somebody said it earlier, if you're not in a wheelchair, you don't have a disability. So yeah. And like I said, just getting people to, we've done well with our SIL in the past 3.5 years. Before I'm going to throw this out there because I'm super proud of these numbers. The year before I started, 7 people in our county were served, and last year it was 203. So yeah, in 3.5 years. So I'm super proud of those numbers. But again, getting that peer mentoring part of it off the ground has been so difficult.
This is Cassidy. Jen, I'm wondering if you have the capacity to do a community impact report to show the impact that SILs have. And also maybe within that, we've written a community letter to King County, specifically identifying disability and talking about how it's ignored, with some education on social model versus medical model I could send. We also just did a community impact report. It doesn't look like, we really tried, but it doesn't look like other organizations where it's like 1,200 people served, X amount of money raised. It looks a little different, but it still gets the point across to other organizations, potential funders. We're making a difference and we want to do more. So I don't know if you might want to backtrack to just getting the word out that you exist to get that influx in or support from other organizations. But I have to celebrate with you. That is huge, Jen. You infinitely increased your participant count. Celebrate that, share it, community impact report, and put it out there and make an ask for the community from support y'all need too.
So we do a ton of outreach, And we always talk about the core services every time we go out. We actually cover 10.5 counties, and our office does. We have 2 offices. We're the satellite office, but we cover 10.5 counties. So again, another part of it is, I'm going to throw Jordan, Montana out there. You should Google it. It's got 350 people in it. And they definitely, we take care of our own and we do not need you here. So that has been super difficult in our smaller communities too, because they just don't ask for help.
That bringing awareness, that's one thing that our agency is doing as well. We have a rural area that we deal with, the Gloucester area, the Middle Peninsula of Virginia. That's a real rural area. And we try to get out as much as possible. We attend like information fairs, to hand out our brochures and let people know about our agency and the services that we provide. But another one is that we provide a lot on word of mouth advertisement. And because some person that knows somebody would tell them about us, and then they'll call and inquire. That's the word of mouth, but we have to, talk to people to let them know about us. But the first thing about awareness is that I hold this group conversation. I had this group conversation about positive perception. And the main course of that, the main point of that was to figure out, how does this individual perceive themselves with the disability? And then how do they feel about the disability? And then we talk about, well, how do you think society feels about you having a disability? Or how do you think society views you? And we talk about these things so that way they can get understanding of who they are and hopefully be able to accept their disability for what it is. And once you accept your disability, then things can start growing for you and doors can start opening up for you. So we try to put that out to the participants on the perception of themselves, and then talk about the way they think society perceives them. And then ultimately it would change the perception on how they see themselves, and it change it more positive. And, it's really helpful, encouraging conversation to have. But the word of mouth is, people can't be afraid to talk about this, and they got to be proud of it. But first they have to know about it. And I guess that's what we're talking about. But it's just getting out there and just taking advantage of every opportunity to let your agency be known. We still do that even in the city area. A lot of people with disabilities know about us, but a lot of people do not. And so I think that's a struggle across the board. But I think the more that people is involved with it and they like it, they'll share it with someone. So I think that power, that word of mouth networking is very important in this field.
So I have 2 comments for that. One, we also do a grassroots kind of outreach where you go in and shake hands. That's how you get to know your community members and your people.
Mhm.
Honestly, the town we live in is, what is it, Dust, like 5,000? Yeah, about 5,000. I cannot go into the grocery store without somebody asking me, can Lyft help my cousin's brother, my poor husband, when we go grocery shopping? He's like, you stand here, I'll go get the stuff. Because inevitably, that is how it works.
Right.
My staff here is like, I'm not going anywhere with you anymore. We can't get anywhere.
This is James from Disability Link. And I just want to piggyback off of what Troy was saying. Because when I first got here to Disability Link, and I was a consumer. And Linda can contest this. I didn't want anybody to know about my disability. But the more that I talked about it, I talked to different individuals, disability or not, they wanted to know more about me.
Right.
And how my life was going. How did I get from point A to point B? Growing up, it was hard for me as an individual with a disability compared to now. I'm 58 years old. It was hard for me, so I basically had to, here at Disability Room, what do we preach? Independent living. It's all about what you want to do as an individual. So I had to basically, with those supports from Disability Link And the individuals that I got to meet, you know, I was able to come out of that shell, spread the word. And like I stated before, hey, I'm all about spreading the word. We serve 12 counties. We do outreach on a monthly basis here at Disability Link. I myself and 3 other individuals, we do. But those individuals that are not served, when they see me on Marta Mobility and they see my badge, what is Disability Link about? Oh, hey, if you got time, that's a great conversation. You know, I'm ready to talk about it. Hey, I'm ready to pull you in. What can we do together? What can I help you get where you need to go, whatever the case may be. So it's all about word of mouth, not being afraid to spread the word. And you never know who you're helping. You never know.
On
Thanks,
that
James.
note too, you will never know where you find somebody.
Yeah.
Could help. I was in getting signing my taxes last week, and there was a veteran gal that worked for the military that was she was a civilian having a hard time getting some document. And I'm like, here's my card, come see me. So you never know.
You never know.
Yep.
They got a couple
Maria
of
has
hands
her-
raised here, guys.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Maria?
Hi, all. It's me again, Maria. And Jen, I was wondering if you've ever worked with RTC Rural. They're based out of the University of Montana. And I actually heard about them through one of these calls a while ago. But they've been a really good resource. They do national, they collect data nationally, and they can break down the demographics of the area you live in down to the county level. They also helped me create resource maps for our really rural communities. So I don't know if Lily or Raina are on the call. They may not be, but they've been a great resource, and you can apply to do it's called the Rural Outreach Peer Network. And so we meet as a group so we can talk through different things that we're trying to do, different services that we want to provide or outreach ideas. But yeah, they've been great. And so that's another resource to look into. I'll throw their website into the chat.
That's great. Thanks, Maria.
Christine?
So me again. I just wanted to kind of piggyback what Troy was saying. When I work with the consumers, and one of the workshops I do is actually coping with your disability. As a person with a disability myself, I kind of use myself as the example. A lot of times I've overcome a lot of things in my life. So we do a coping workshop, and then we let people kind of talk about what bothers them the most. The other thing that I try to do is share the history of how the media in general has looked at people with disabilities to show what kind of improvements have been made. And then I also use a lot of disability history. Somebody was mentioning pride, but I feel like as you know, as CILs, one of the things we could do is share that the disability community has such a rich history that that's something that our consumers, they can learn more about, and it can make them feel good to see that the things that we have done as a community have helped other people. And that even though the ADA, we can always say it can always be better, it has made some significant improvements in people's lives.
Yes, ma'am. I can agree to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine, Troy. This is Linda, and I just want to point out again, as Scott did before, that there's a number of ideas in chat. I don't know if you have the capacity to listen to talk and look at chat at the same time. It's beyond my capabilities usually. But here is Davina Patton talking about partnering with the local 310 or 310 boards or ARCs. And here's Robert talking about connecting older and younger participants so that that wonderful part of peer support experience can be shared to a younger group. Melissa Johnson talked about having bulletin boards in the post offices and other places where people might collect. What else do we have? Just a whole breadth of things that people do in terms of particular groups or giving people opportunities to learn more about independent living. Maybe Davina says, what about local colleges or universities or other places to connect with if they happen to have some, to let them know about the things that are going on at the SIL. Marilyn's talking about 5 stages of grief, and so how people move forward. People are congratulating themselves on the great work that we do, quite right too. Peer support groups in the community give tours of our accessible buildings, says Maria, so people can learn. This is Linda talking. I mean, I think that many of us do better when we understand our context, how we're fitting into the world, what else is going on. Never visit an organization without dropping off a brochure. You know, never travel without brochures, flyers, and business cards. Melissa Johnson talking about local health departments having party in the park with social services vendors where you can provide some information and its activities too. Of course, as centers for independent living, we never want to just be seen as another social service or human services agency. We're very different from most human services agency. More handbooks and trainings, says Tracy. Training documents that some agency has, and looking at others to see what other SILs are missing and what we need to do to improve that, how to compare. And fee for service money to do marketing, says Pam Davis. Do you have marketing budgets? Asked Danielle. These are things that might be helpful. Donna talks about painting rocks and with positive affirmations and leaving them to places. Well, somebody's been doing that in my neighborhood. I appreciate it. Dree Henry in Cincinnati putting out consumer needs assessment to get feedback from current consumers and potential consumers, what they would like to see done, activities, events, and so on. How can we connect? Well, one of the ways we can connect is keep in touch with these core conversation discussions, as April has organized this one right now. It's very helpful, isn't it, to hear other people talking. All right. There's a couple of LaDonna's sent some links. I'm not sure what the links are for, LaDonna. Maybe other people have a better idea. They've been paying attention better than I have. We had outreach at local food banks, says Maureen DeFranco, brochures and so on. Volunteers at a table for a couple of hours. Great use of time. But there's the RTC Rural from University of Montana information. Fantastic. Some people saying that's good. Resource maps. Maria Cordova is sending. Somebody saying great information, and Janine is giving a connection with the ILRU, IL philosophy and history.
And then Linda, we're at the top of our time.
Yes, we are that.
And there's been a wonderful bunch of peer support been going on here today, and I think that's wonderful. And if I'm not mistaken, when you receive your copy of the recording, the chats should be all available on there to you too. So you'll have all these links, all these useful links that people have added in. And I thank you very much, and be looking for our next Core Connections meeting.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I was here to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy.
Yes.
Thanks everybody for your contributions. Really thoughtful ideas. Thank you for sharing and supporting. Peer support in action, this is. Thank you very much. See you next time. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Hi, Troy. Where in Montana are you from?
Huh?
Where in Montana are you from? I'm from Plains.
You said Troy?
Yeah, I thought.
Yes.
Oh, I'm in Hampton, Virginia.
Oh, wrong. I meant the man with the mustache.
This is Scott, and
Scott. Hi, Scott.
I live in Bozeman.
Oh, you're a ways from
Yep.
me. I live in Plains near Kalispell.
All right.
Cool. Thanks for letting me caption.